Last year there was a fantastic thing at Greenbelt, which was a huge block of ice with things buried in it that melted through the weekend. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. At first I wasn't quite sure what it was about. Who knows if I am now, but Greenbelt is full of those magical sort of things. And the people that put that together, I think, had some ideas what it was about, but I don't think they'd anticipated teenagers sort of getting hammers out and trying to break Jesus out of the ice or whatever it was. It kind of became an act of vandalism, but it was totally wonderful, and I couldn't think of anywhere other than Greenbelt where you get that kind of thing. I've been thinking a lot about worship and leading worship, and thinking about worship leading, there's sort of two dominant models, I suppose. One is somebody who leads a band, often seems to be a guitar player, I don't know why, nothing wrong with guitar. And another is, I suppose, somebody who presides at liturgy, and they're both sort of up front kind of roles. But one of the things about the creative worship at Greenbelt is sort of out of that's come a new idea about leading that's a bit like curating in the art world. So that the person who puts together an art exhibition is someone who thinks about the creative ideas and puts them together. But actually when you encounter the worship, you might not even meet the person or the team that have been involved in stuff. The creativity's kind of gone in beforehand. It's a backgrounded role, so that encountering that block of ice, you didn't meet the people that put it together. It was just kind of there in the space, I suppose. And I live in London, which in terms of art is a fantastic city, loads of art things. So whenever I have a day off or something, I try and go and encounter some of the art, contemporary art stuff, installation stuff. And I think there's a real tie-up in terms of imagination between that and worship. And I mean, globally, I think, Greenbelt has been a sort of hub for that kind of creativity and that sort of worship, and I don't know, there are lots of moments I remember. I'm involved in Community Grace, and we've done various things at Greenbelt over the years, and often the best ideas or the things that we do best in terms of worship, I think, are the craziest things that people suggest. So one of the things we're doing involves people wearing 500 pairs of red and blue glasses, and depending on what glasses you're wearing, you're going to see different things. And I love that kind of creativity in terms of worship and how Greenbelt sort of opened that up, I suppose. In terms of the map in the UK, in terms of worship, for a lot of people, it's felt like there are two choices, I suppose. One is the sort of charismatic worship thing as a model, which is, you know, typically a band, maybe a preacher, some more worship and response or whatever. That's the kind of thing. And then on the other hand, you've had much more of a liturgical framework around worship that, you know, typically follows the seasons of the church year and a prayer book or whatever it is. And you know, because it follows the lectionary and so on, it has more kind of depth to it. But I think on the one hand, the charismatic thing can be passionate, but if you've been involved in it for a while, after 2 or 3 years it can run a bit thin. And the range of themes that it covers, if you have a parent who dies of cancer, for example, as I did, you know, there's not much lament or struggle or brokenness in that tradition, but so it can dry up for people, I think. And on the other hand, the liturgical tradition, whilst it has a depth to it, it can dry up for different reasons, because it feels like the same thing served up week in, week out. So I think the sort of worship that often has been held up and celebrated at Greenbelt, what's been called alternative worship or creative worship, or now we're talking about curating as kind of the model of how you lead that worship, has tried to plot a third path that's very much got the kind of engagement and depth with the tradition and so on, but actually has a different way of interfacing with culture. It wants to engage with culture very differently and wear the cultural robes, I suppose, of culture in that way. So I think there's a parallel with the art world in that a lot of contemporary art has made that kind of play with objects of everyday life. So you go to some installations and, well, I mean, ones that I've been to, often the reaction I've had is, you know, I could have done that. You know, it's like a pile of rubbish in the middle of the room, or things stuck on the wall. But it's about the power of ideas, rather than necessarily the technical kind of expertise. And there's something about the everyday and the culture of everyday being used in a space like that connects with your own life. And I think that's been an exciting journey in worship, partly because I think a lot of people feel like you live your life in one world 6 days a week, then you go to Planet Church, which is another world, and then you go back to the real world afterwards. And I think that sort of worship, that's saying how does worship connect with everyday life and popular culture, it is saying you don't have to make that separation. You know, you can live life and create church out of that experience of real life, I guess. And Greenbelt, for me, has kind of been a place where that sort of stuff's been modelled wonderfully.